Sitting behind me is a new SRT Viper. We've tested, driven, and written about it quite a few times already, but this is actually the first time we've had one at our office in Ann Arbor. So we thought we'd take it out in the garage, poke around underneath it, and see what we can find out. Unique to the Viper is external hood release. It's actually right in here. If it's locked, you will set the alarm off. Yeah, if you ever want to look at a Viper engine, just walk up and do that. You might have angry owner, but you know, what are they going to do? The V10 in the Viper displaces 8.4 liters, making 640 horsepower and 600 pound-feet of torque. It's actually based on the architecture of an old Chrysler V8 engine that dates to the 60s, and that was known as the LA V8. Unlike the old iron block V8, this V10 has been cast in aluminum, and it also features variable valve timing with a crafty camshaft and a camshaft setup. There's basically two camshafts in one. It gives the Viper independent variable valve timing of both intake and exhaust valves, whereas any other pushrod engine with a single camshaft, if you want to vary the intake cam timing, you have to change the exhaust cam timing as well. One of the big cosmetic exterior differences between the GTS model and the regular SRT Viper is the hood. This GTS hood just has two nostrils. The base Viper has the 3 gills. Let's get it up in the air and take a peek underneath. This is the front suspension. It's you know, pretty basic race car stuff. Big steel structural members run full length under all this steel here. The eccentric bolts at the inboard mounts allow you to actually change the position of the pivot there, moving it inboard or outboard, which then changes the camber of the tire. Let's pop a wheel off and take a look at the brakes and suspension. Venting and, you know, these grooves in here that kind of serve a couple purposes. That they release expanding gases and also kind of sweep the pads. Back in here you see big vents for cooling, big brakes. Unequal length control arms, obviously the lower one's longer than the upper one. Viper faithfuls won't see a lot different, you know, on the surface from old Viper to this new SRT Viper. You know, you still have the 6-bolt hubs, cast aluminum. Control arms have, you know, some nice shape to them. You know, this isn't the type of cast you need to see come out of, you know, Maranello, for example, but it doesn't have to be, you know, fancy looking. It just gets the job done. These adjustable monotube shocks are a version of Bilstein's Damptronic product line. Basically, they vary the damping by changing the valving inside the damper electronically. Original Viper had side pipes. New one has side pipes. And you can see the exhaust comes in right here and then goes basically 90 degrees out to the rocker panel and exits right back there. You have at least one cat right here. There's not a lot of sound deadening. The 6-speed manual transmission is made by Tremec. It is model number TR6060. You'll also find this transmission in GT500s, older Corvettes, and now the newest Corvette has a 7-speed version of this transmission. One of the primary differences in layout between this and the Corvette is the transmission. But as opposed to being mounted in the rear as a transaxle, it is bolted right up to the engine, which locates a little more weight forward. Yeah, locating the transmission here in what would be conventionally called the transmission tunnel is you're directly shifting the transmission as opposed to via cables or linkage that you have to with a transaxle. And the shifter is great in this car. It's I mean, it's really short throws, but they aren't like so stiff that it's obnoxious. Really positive, like you know exactly when it's in gear. And moving further back, first thing you see is a couple holes in this under tray. This is kind of a quasi NACA duct that's used to feed to help cool the differential. Big rear tires. Pardon the prop, but it's you know, what is that? Roughly 13 and some change. You know, it's a big, beefy Pirelli P0. It's a 355 aspect ratio. There's not too many tires on the road that are wider than that. Similar setup as far as suspension goes. To the front, unequal length control arms, toe control link. That is stubby, beefy little turnbuckle. Maybe it had to be that big because it takes a lot of load just from the tire and having to, you know, really control that tire in what direction it's pointed. So if you kind of get an eye level in the rear, you can see what designers talk about when they talk about a flat bottom. I mean, there is almost nothing with the exception of a few fasteners. So that's the Viper. You know, it's still, you know, kind of a no-nonsense, go fast, make noise sports car. Not a lot of groundbreaking technology, but, you know, you don't have to have groundbreaking technology necessarily to go fast. And the Viper is sure one that proves it.